I am so excited for today's episode. We're covering HopeFilled Financial FootStep number 6, 401 Kid. If you are a parent to be, or someone who wants to have children in the future, today's episode is for you. We're going to focus on how you can financially support your children in a healthy way and in a way that helps them grow in healthy money habits and frugality. Make sure you stick around for the example at the end. Good morning and welcome to the HopeFilled Financial Podcast. My name is Jay Disberger, your one and only HopeFilled Financial Coach, and I'm so happy that you're here with us today. As I said in the intro, I'm excited because we're talking about HopeFilled Financial FootStep number 6. We're talking about kiddos and how we can best help them not only with the money that we have that we want to contribute to their future, but also in the way that we are training our children in and how they relate to money. That's where I want to focus in today's story. So we're going to get some inspiration from an NPR article before I dive into a personal story about how my parents helped me when it came to how I learned about money through my childhood. The NPR article is called "Want to Teach Your Kids About Money? Start by Including Them in Conversations." Now, I'm not going to read through this whole article, but I think it's a good resource for you. I think it's inspiring, and I want to share some words from this article. If we scroll down past the intro, they mention that it's good to have conversations with your children about money. This is very true. I believe that wealthier families talk about money more openly so it doesn't feel like a taboo topic. Think about it. If you don't discuss money with your children, they might start thinking that it's something that you simply can't talk about. It might start feeling taboo, and it'll make it difficult for them to ask the right questions so they can grow in financial literacy and frugality. Further down in this article, it talks about allowances. We've talked about allowances in a past episode. I have some opinions on them. I think that allowances help children grow when it comes to management of money, but I think it may separate children from associating time and work with money because the money is just there. We'll talk about that more in the story after we finish the article. Moving on, there's a little bit about starting saving as early as possible with your children. We're really going to dive into that on the main topic. Don't wait, it's never too late. And for the words here at the bottom that wrap up, this is what I really want to drive home right now. When parents lack confidence or control of their own financial situation, they can be less willing to talk about money with their children. But if you wait until your finances are perfect before teaching kids about money, then you're doing a disservice to your kid. And this is why I put 401 Kid as HopeFilled Financial FootStep number 6. After you have gotten debt-free, you have some stability with your savings, you have your fully funded emergency fund, you've taken control with your own financial management, and you're saving for the future, we can now start tangibly encouraging and inspiring our children when it comes to saving for their future through this step. We should be teaching them and training them in good money habits and frugality throughout their whole lives, no matter where we are in the journey. But it is at this point that we are able to incentivize them through this step. Children are impacted by a parent's financial decisions whether or not you choose to include them in the conversation. That is a heavy truth. If you're transparent about your money choices instead of leaving kids in the dark, you're setting them up better for success by helping them understand the power money can hold and providing opportunities to learn from your mistakes together. The sheer act of talking about it brings confidence. So don't stress if you feel like your financial life is a bit out of sorts or if you didn't practice good money habits with your kids from the get-go. It's never too late. A lot of grown-ups never talk to their parents about money, right? You don't have to be perfect. You just have to start the conversation. I think it's a beautiful and hope-filled reminder that it's never too late to start working with your children and helping them learn about money. I'm sure you can remember the way that your parents were with money, how you were exposed to different ways of relating to money through osmosis by simple exposure, with or without the conversation. And you may be able to remember certain parts of your childhood that taught you special facets about how money works. And for that reason, I want to share with you one of the best things that my mom and dad ever did for me when I was a kid. They gave us limits when it came to birthday gifts, Christmas gifts in general. For birthdays and Christmas, you were limited to 3 gifts that you could request, not in totality exceeding $100 in value. Now, I had 5 younger siblings. This was a good bit ago now, so $100 went a lot further than it does today. And this was a relatively fair rule. However, sometimes we might want something, really want something that exceeded $100. That expensive item could make a valuable gift that my parents would want us to have. For example, when I was a young boy, I really wanted a Lego Mindstorms Robotics Kit. I was very mechanically inclined and I loved building with Legos. I thought building a programmable robot was awesome. I thought it was going to be like the peak of all things that I would ever own if I could just get it. But it was, I think, $200, maybe a little more than $200. It was well past the limit. It was double the limit. So what was I to do? What were my parents to do? If I wanted to tinker with Legos and build robots, well, that could lead to a career in mechanical engineering or engineering in general. They wanted to encourage that, but they don't want to break the rule. What are they to do? Well, in this case, and I'll give some credit to my dad here, he wanted us to associate work and time with money. He wanted us to realize that if we wanted to earn money, it was going to cost our time and it was going to cost our effort. We had to work to earn money. Money wasn't going to be freely given to us. So here was the deal. I was told that I could do extra chores and yard work leading up to my birthday and earn the $100 that exceeded the gift limit. I wouldn't be picking two other smaller gifts. I would be getting the single gift as long as I could, by my birthday, earn that $100. And I remember that my parents would assign a dollar value to a particular task that I would engage with. I would complete that task and they'd add it to the tally for what I had earned toward the robotics kit. It's been a while, so I might be slightly misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure we were in the backyard on the deck, looking over the backyard after I'd finished the last chore. And my father came to me and said, "You've done it. You've earned the $100 for this robotics kit." And I'm pretty sure he went to the bank to get it. He had a crisp $100 bill. And he handed it to me. He goes, "This is the money that you've earned through the work that you've done." And I held it. And I think he wanted me to realize just how valuable that one little piece of paper was, how much work it represented leading up to that point. And he wanted to make sure that I experienced what it was like to let that go in exchange for the other half of my gift. And I remember giving it back to him, letting it go, and then receiving this. This was the Lego Robotics Kit that I wanted growing up. I did get it for my birthday, and you can, if you see the video, you can tell by the boxes that the edges are frayed. It's worn, but I took such good care of this thing. All the pieces, years and years later, are still in here. And I've added to my robotics collection over time and continued to build really cool things with it. I remember in high school, I used it to build a sumo bot and compete in Science Olympiad. And now I have this. This is a robot that I'm building with my son. It's got little caterpillar treads and suspension, and we're going to try to make a little playing card shooter that goes on top. I know my son's only 2.5, but he loves building robots. And I have this robotics kit and I treasured it. I took good care of it. It's still here for him because I worked so hard for it. I understood the time and value that I had to put into the world in order to receive the thing that I needed or wanted. It was a beautiful gift that my parents gave me, not the robotics kit, but the lesson that underpinned it. It was a lesson that inspired my younger siblings to work for gifts that they wanted that were over and beyond the $100 limit. And whenever we worked for something and we put our own blood, sweat, and tears into it, we took care of those things much more than we would have if it was freely given to us. And this is a strong underpinning for HopeFilled Financial FootStep number 6, 401 Kid, in today's main topic. Today's main topic is HopeFilled Financial FootStep number 6, 401 Kid, and this is how it works. As your children grow up, they're going to have an ever-increasing need to buy expensive things. The two biggest examples that I can think of are a car and potentially a higher education, be that an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or going to trade school. There may be some major educational expense that they need to incur in order to pursue the career that they're passionate about. There are other expenses too, like a computer or a smartphone, and these items can represent an intense amount of work that they have to do if they're going to earn the whole thing themselves as they're easing into the bigger world past their childhood and learning about the time value of money, how much work they have to put in to earn that money. It can become discouraging if they feel like it's so much that it's not even worth beginning. And I know as parents that we really want to provide for our children and give them the things that they want. But if we give them absolutely everything without having them work for some of it, they may not value it as much. And we're leaving a great lesson about money, about frugality on the table when we just give them absolutely everything. And this is what 401 Kit is all about. We want to take the goals that you believe are healthy for them and that they share with you, be it education, a car, computer, doesn't matter. And you want to be able to make a list of these major goals and roughly what it's going to cost your child to achieve those goals. Now, this is a good opportunity to talk about frugality, the efficiency that underpins the intentional practice of prudent economy. Personally, I think frugality, under that definition, is indeed the underpinning virtue for all things personal finance. And I'll link a playlist in the description below that goes into frugality in depth. But really, just picking the goals can be an important lesson because we want to pick something that's realistic, and we can make something more realistic by offering our child a match up to a limit. I think the limit is very important to implement here because we don't want a child who is just like a bulldozer freight train of energy and ambition to go out there and earn like 30 or 40K and expect you to match it when you don't have near that capacity. You got to work within the limits of your own budget, know what those limits are as you're helping them set the goal. So say, hey, I'll match you up to a limit. If they want to go over and beyond that match, they don't have to stop at the bare minimum of the match. They can save beyond it. That's up to them. But we're inspiring them by helping them get to a baseline of their goal. Let's say it's a car and they want a $10,000 car and you can afford to match them $5,000 toward the car. If they earn $5,000, you match that $5,000. If they earn $4,000 toward the car, you can match $4,000. And if they earn $12,000 for the car, you still give them just the limit, the $5,000. And then they buy the car using the money that they earned and the money that you use to incentivize them to pursue a healthy goal. This is basically the same thing that your employer does when it comes to your 401k for retirement. They provide a match to you to incentivize you to save for retirement. They're trying to encourage you to make a healthy financial decision. We're doing the same thing here for our kids. Now, when it comes to smaller items, we can save for our kids for these major decisions probably within our own account and then help spend out of that account on their behalf. Or we could set up a savings account for them so that you can pull up the number and show how it's growing. You can show them the contributions that they've made, take them to the bank, they deposit the money, they see it going in there, and see you make a transfer that's equal to the deposit that they've made up to your agreed upon limit. That way they can watch their progress and learn about how bank accounts work. When it comes to larger items, like, say, purchasing a car, there are things like gift tax that can be very difficult on you come April. So we need to think about what is the most tax efficient way when we're working with our child on large purchases that approach or exceed gift tax limits. And that's where something like an UTMA or an UGMA might come in. UTMA stands for Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. This is a custodial account of sorts where you're in charge of the money, you manage it on behalf of your child, and you are required to act as a fiduciary on behalf of the child. The money that goes in there, be it coming from you or your child, belongs to your child and can only be used for expenses for the benefit of the child. And once they are no longer a minor, 18, 20, 21, depending on your state, whatever, they get that money. It's moved over to them and then they start managing it. It's a good way to transfer wealth to them if you're not worried about the balance in there being accounted for against needs-based scholarships that they apply for in the future, as the balance of an UTMA is accounted for as the child's net worth. And it may disqualify them from certain needs-based scholarships or grants. Anyway, the UTMA is exempt, I believe, to a limit. It'll change, so you got to know your tax code before you engage with it, up to a limit. So when you're putting the money in there for larger purchases, it helps you get around the gift tax a little bit. And when it's invested, the growth is going to be taxed at the child's earned income tax bracket, which is going to hopefully be lower than yours, especially if they're not earning an income. So the capital gains they realize is going to be taxed much more efficiently, if it's taxed at all, compared to if you were to invest in just your own name, pull it out, and then try to deal with the gift tax stuff later. Now, I think it's important when we're talking about UTMAs or UGMAs, any Transfer to Minors Act, that if you plan on spending money out of the account ahead of your child becoming a legal adult, ahead of them taking control of this money, you need to make sure that you are compliant with the laws around it as a fiduciary custodian for them. Fairmark.com here quotes the basic rules governing the expenses that you can have out of an UTMA. It reads, a custodian may deliver or pay to the minor or expend for the minor's benefit so much of the custodial property as the custodian considers advisable for the use and benefit of the minor without court order and without regard to the duty or ability of the custodian personally or of any other person to support the minor, or 2, any other income of property of the minor which may be applicable or available for that purpose. Section 14A of the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. If you scroll down, good examples are costs of education, even though this isn't getting good tax treatment like a 529 or a Coverdale would, or buying a car for the child, or even paying taxes that are due from the growth that happened within the UTMA. That is an example here of something that's good. Now, what wouldn't be good is buying a car for the child, but making you the owner and not the child. That would be inappropriate. I am not a CPA, and this is not constituting tax advice. So please know that this is for informational purposes only, and consult with a licensed tax professional or a financial advisor before engaging with a plan to make sure that you don't mess it up because you misunderstood or something was misrepresented that you found on the internet. Please understand your plan before you engage with it. Do your research and work with experts, licensed experts where applicable. Now, if you're working to save for higher education, educational expenses in general, there are a couple good options. There's the Coverdell ESA, Educational Savings Account, and there's the 529. We're going to talk about those now in a little bit more depth and how the Secure Act 2.0 changed the way that I'm managing my plan for my kiddos. The government wants to incentivize well-educated citizens for the benefit of all of society, so educational savings dollars are treated differently under tax code. They're going to be treated more favorably in certain accounts where your expenses are limited to qualified educational expenses. Now, we're going to start by talking about an ESA. An ESA and a 529 can both be applicable to college expenses. And if you want to be saving with the expectation that your child goes to college, either can be a good option. There are good differences that you need to understand. This episode's not going to cover the full breadth of it, but in general, an ESA is going to have a wider breadth of investment choices for you. So you can be more aggressive or more conservative than the options that live in a 529. It also is going to have a lower contribution limit. I think it's around $2,000 at the time of recording. Again, you have to know your own tax code. Meanwhile, a 529 has a very high contribution limit. It varies state to state. You see, a 529 is a state-sponsored account as opposed to an educational savings account being something that can be taken out with individual brokerages. It's not state-sponsored at all. Because 529s are state-sponsored, you can get a tax break from your state taxes by contributing to them if you're contributing to your own state's respective plan. So how does this play into 401 Kit? Well, regardless of which account you're saving for, if you have an educational savings account for your child, you can say, hey, I'll put $1,000 in here if you put $1,000 in here this year when they get to a point where they can start saving in that account. That means that you're going to hit the contribution limit there. And if they want to exceed that, you can have a 529 and say, I'll put X number of dollars in, I'll match it up to that point. And if you want to put more in, you can. This is also a great opportunity to inspire your child to understand investing, because you're probably going to be investing these dollars in some sort of mutual fund. These funds may have a prospectus that your child can understand with you. You can talk about average growth rates, historical performance. You can talk about fees. You can talk about turnover ratios. It's a really good opportunity to practically look at investing for them so that it's not so scary in the future. Another fun thing we can teach our kids when it comes to saving in a 529 or an ESA is projecting how much money we need to be saving now in order to afford college later, or whatever higher education your child wants to pursue. So you can sit down and look at an investment calculator, do some projections, and say, hey, if you want to be able to afford X number of dollars of school, this is kind of what it costs now. We got to be saving this much every month. And that can help them understand that investments are a powerful tool for them to make their dreams a reality in the long run. Personally, for my decisions, I'm right now investing in an educational savings account because I like the freedom of choice for the different investment types. And I also like that the qualifying expenses are treated slightly different than a 529 so that I can use them, at least in my respective states and the understanding I have of the tax code. I can use it for homeschooling expenses for K through 12. I believe a 529 can qualify for K through 12 expenses, but only tuition. And I want to homeschool my kiddos, Oliver and Isaac. So if I'm going to be paying for books and materials out of the educational savings account and taking advantage of the tax treatment there on their behalf, I'm going to need to have that money in an ESA to execute that and not run into trouble. So over and beyond what I definitely want to keep earmarked just for their college, an ESA makes sense. But the Secure Act 2.0 did something really, really cool this past year. You are now able to take a 529 unused funds up to a limit for a 529 and roll them over into a Roth IRA if they are not used for educational expenses. One of the biggest fears with a 529 and an ESA, historically speaking, has been overfunding them. If you're given a lot of cushion that can be rolled over into a Roth IRA, you're going to have a much harder time overfunding an educational savings account for the purpose of education. In fact, I personally feel like I'm going to have a much easier time pouring money that I want to transfer to Oliver and Isaac into their educational savings accounts for their future because of this change. Now, I told you I'm using an ESA, a Coverdell account, instead of a 529 right now. The Secured Act 2.0 does not allow you to roll over a Coverdell into a Roth IRA, just a 529, just the state-sponsored plan that falls under 529. However, other laws allow you to roll an educational savings account into a 529. You just simply can't roll a 529 back to an educational savings account, at least at the time of this recording. So there's a one-way ticket. I can use the ESA right now for the freedom that I like and the educational expenses K through 12 for the homeschooling that I need now. And then later, when I'm ready to put the portion that it was earmarked for their college, I can move that over to a 529 as long as I follow the right rules and time it right and have the accounts open for the right amount of time. Anything that they don't spend, say because they went to a cheaper school or they got massive scholarships, can be rolled over into that Roth IRA within a limit. We're now going to jump into an article from Thrivent that talks about this. What I have here is the Thrivent article, 529 Rollover to Roth IRA, How the Secure Act 2.0 Changed the Rules. This was an article that was written in 2023, but recently revised in March of this year. I'm going to read through it and talk through what applies here to my understanding and my plan. The Secure Act 2.0 went into effect this year, and it could make preparing for retirement a little bit easier. The broad-ranging law passed in 2022 contains a number of provisions designed to help Americans reach their savings goals. Among them is the ability to roll over extra money from a 529 to a Roth IRA. The change provides a compelling new option for college savers. The money left over in your education savings plan is now potentially tax-free source of income for the later years. However, there are restrictions on who can perform the conversion and how much you can roll over. Pay extra close attention to the how much because we need to understand these limits if this is something that we want to enact for our kiddos or help guide them to enact. Let's take a look at these accounts and see what you need to know about the new law. Saving for education costs with a 529 plan is the next section. A 529 plan is a savings account that allows people to set aside money for higher education. Any money placed in the account must be used for qualifying educational expenses as defined by law. In the past, if you made a withdrawal and used the money for non-educational related expenses, you paid income tax as well as a 10% penalty on any investment earnings you pulled out. Oof. Under the old rules, if the beneficiary did not use the funds for qualifying educational expenses, the only way to avoid the withdrawal penalty was to transfer the money to another beneficiary within the family, such as another child or even a parent who could use it for educational expenses. This is something that came up for my wife with a Coverdell ESA. You're not allowed to have that money in the Coverdell past age 30, I believe, without transferring it to someone else or spending it. When we had our firstborn, we transferred her ESA to his name and then split that monies up between him and his younger brother so that they would have equal portions given the time value and correcting for inflation for their college, the extra monies that mom had and didn't need to spend. Had that money been rolled over to a 529, she would have been able to hold on to the money longer, but she wouldn't have been able to spend it on anything unless she went back to school or transferred it to another beneficiary who was incurring educational expenses. Back to the article, what to know about Roth IRAs. A Roth individual retirement account is a tax advantage account designed for retirement savings. Unlike traditional IRAs, you contribute money you've already paid taxes on to the Roth IRA. The money in your Roth IRA grows on a tax-deferred basis, which means your balance isn't reduced every year by taxes on the investment gains. You can withdraw your original contributions to a Roth IRA tax-free and penalty-free at any time. And when you reach age 59 and a half, you can withdraw the earnings tax-free as long as you've owned the Roth IRA for at least 5 years. That 5-year rule is one that often gets overlooked, and I'm glad that they brought it up. These features make these accounts particularly beneficial if you're young and pay a relatively low tax rate. Later, you can make tax-free withdrawals at a stage in life when you expect to be in a higher tax bracket. Say you have a very high retirement income that you want from your nest egg. That's a good example. If you take money out of a Roth account before age 59 and a half, you typically owe income tax plus that pesky 10% penalty on the earnings. However, one of the perks of a Roth IRA is there are several exceptions to early withdrawal penalties that provide you with greater financial flexibility. By and large, I'm not a fan of these exceptions because I believe that money that's earmarked for retirement should stay so unless there is absolutely no other option. Moving on with the article, rules for converting a 529 plan to a Roth IRA. This is where we got to pay extra close attention. If you zoned out while I was reading, come back in, pay attention, look at me. The Secure Act 2.0 gives you the ability to transfer excess funds in your 529 to a Roth IRA without paying taxes or penalties. Below are the basic rules you should know about the 529 to Roth IRA rollover. Eligibility and criteria include the 529 plan must have been open for a minimum of 15 years. This means for me to enact my plan for my kiddos, I need to make sure that I open this account when they're young, even if I'm not going to be actively contributing to it, and I'm going to prioritize the ESA. The owner of the Roth IRA must be the beneficiary of the 529 plan. In my case, this aligns with my goals. The Roth IRA owner must have earned income at least equal to the amount of the rollover. This is important for consistency with other IRA rules. If you are not earning an income, you cannot invest in an IRA or a Roth IRA. So it only makes sense that you're working and that your income is exceeding what you're rolling over. I'm only worried about making sure that my children understand this so they don't try to roll things over early before they're really making a proper income. The fourth point is contributions made to the 529 plan in the last 5 years, including the associated earnings, are ineligible for a tax-free transfer. For simplicity, I'd say if contributions stop 5 years prior to you wanting to make this rollover happen, you're probably going to be okay, but you should really talk to a tax expert there. Transfers you make from a 529 to a Roth IRA count against your yearly Roth IRA contribution caps. That's important. Again, transfers you make from a 529 to a Roth IRA count against your yearly Roth IRA contribution caps, which are currently at $7,000 for people younger than 50 and $8,000 if you're older than 50. Why is this important? If you roll over the money from an unused 529 plan into a Roth IRA and you max it out for the year, you move over $7,000. Say you're younger than 50, you move over $7,000 this year. You're not going to be able to contribute any more to any Roth IRA accounts for that tax year under tax code. The implication that I'm getting from this is it's going to be advantageous for my children to roll the money over at a point where they haven't earned income, but they're really not wanting to be aggressive in saving into their Roth IRA at that moment in time. largely this is a con. And the last one is maybe the most important point for you. The lifetime limit for rollovers is $35,000. Now, I can only speculate that this is going to be corrected for inflation in the future, but there is a lifetime limit to how many dollars you can roll over from a 529 to a Roth IRA. This means that there is a limit for you as a parent for the kind of benefit that you can have spilling over from overfunding a 529 or an ESA that gets rolled over to a 529. I didn't see any criteria there that would limit the rollover from an ESA to a 529 being rolled into a Roth IRA later, as long as that rollover happened 5 years or further back prior to the Roth IRA conversion. Again, talk to a tax expert before engaging with that sort of movement. Now we're going to leave the Thrivent article there. I'll leave it in the description below if you want to read the second half of the article. It's time to wrap things up with a practical example when it comes to this really big expense that's possibly applicable to you as you step into HopeFilled Financial FootStep number 6 as you're engaging with 401 Kid. We're going to start by looking at this website, savingforcollege.com. I recommend this website. They don't sponsor the show in any way, shape, or form, but I recommend this website if you're looking into 529s. You can come in here, you can select what your state is, and it will tell you the best for their state recommendation for a 529 plan. They also have featured plans that you can look through, and they have best rated. They have like a top 10 ranking system for different 529s. You don't have to invest in the 529 that's associated with the state that you live in. Here in the United States, you can invest in any 529 plan that's out there. And I think it's important for you to know that. So step one, if you're going through an example here, is to do your research, learn about the investment options that are in 529s. As not all 529 plans are created equal across various states, open one up, do it when your child is as young as can be so you can get past that 15-year limit and move on to figuring out how much you can be saving for them or how much you'd like to save for them. What I have in front of me now is the Dave Ramsey retirement calculator. We're going to use it for doing some quick and dirty math. Let's say that your child is currently 2. And I say this because, well, my son is 2.5, and I think 2 is a good age. And let's say that you wanted to engage with 401 Kid when they're 7. Up until that point, you're going to contribute a finite amount of money into their account without making them match. They're too young to really understand how money works. Let's say you, at the start of opening the account, loaded it up to $2,000, and you'd like to continue contributing up to $50 a month into their 529 in this case. After inflation, let's say you get 7 to 8%. At age 7, you've got $6,653 in the account. Let's reset this and move that money over to the initial balance, $6,653. And we say we are now 7 years old and we want to go to college when we are 18. This is where the contributions change because we start talking to our child and we say, hey, would you like to contribute to your college savings? If you do, I will match you. I've been putting $50 in there, but I want you to be earning it now. So for every $50 you earn in a month by doing extra chores, I'll match it. So let's move this up to $100 and calculate where we are at age 18. We're at $37,051 using this calculator, just as a projection. And that's in today's money if we use a conservative enough growth rate. That's all well and good. And you can use this example to back engineer how much you would like your child to have from saving for college. You may want them to have enough to go through a full 4-year degree all on their own, but you want to make sure you're not overfunding the account beyond the limits for that rollover that may come down the road. And I want to show you how valuable that rollover can be now. What we have here is the retirement calculator from last week's episode. Let's assume that your child does really well with the scholarships and has $20,000 left over that they can roll over to a Roth IRA. This is less than the lifetime contribution limit, and let's say that they do this over a few years. Remember, they're not going to be able to do the full amount all at once, but we're going to run the numbers as if they do because we'll assume that they leave them the money in the 529 invested during this duration, just the same as it would be in the Roth IRA. For this example, I'm going to now assume a 10% growth rate, not including inflation. We're going to assume that inflation is 3%. At age 60, That little bit of money that they didn't spend on education because they did great on scholarships because you helped them through 401 Kit, through HopeFilled Financial FootStep number 6, grows to almost $300,000 for retirement. Is this enough for your child to retire alone? No, it's not. But it is an incredible projected start. And it gives them such a huge step up in the financial world. Wouldn't it be a massive blessing if your future retirement balance, at a minimum, could have been $250,000? I mean, if you follow the 4% rule for this particular spreadsheet, this equates to, in retirement, a safe distribution of almost $950 every month. This means that there's $1,000 a month now of expenses in retirement that your child no longer has to worry about trying to figure out because you took care of them here. And I fully expect if we engage intentionally with this step in teaching our children how to manage money well, teach them the time value of money, that they're going to be responsible, they're going to be frugal, and they're going to have an epic, hope-filled financial future. And you get to help them because as parents, we so very dearly love our children and we want to set them up for success. And with that, until next week, until next Tuesday, budget bravely and enjoy your hope-filled financial future.